Thomas Neill Cream was born in Glasgow on May 27, 1850. In 1854, his family moved to Canada, which was then a dominion of the British Empire, and he was raised near Quebec City. Cream attended the now-defunct Le Chute Academy before studying at McGill University in Montreal, graduating with an MD-CM degree in 1876. He received postgraduate training at St. Thomas's Hospital Medical School in London and, in 1878, obtained additional qualifications as a physician and surgeon in Edinburgh. Cream then returned to North America to practice medicine in communities in need. After a brief stint in Des Moines, Iowa, he relocated to London, Ontario. In 1876, while living in Waterloo, Quebec, Cream met and courted a woman named Flora Brooks. When Brooks became pregnant after Cream had promised to marry her, he attempted to perform an abortion, but failed, leaving Brooks severely ill. Cream tried to escape to Montreal, but was caught by Brooks' father, who forced him to return and marry her. The day after the wedding, Cream left for England to continue his medical education. The Brooks family never saw or heard from him again. Flora Brooks nearly fully recovered, but died of consumption in 1877. In 1878, Cream returned to North America and set up a medical practice in London, Ontario. He was charged under Ontario's Medical Act for practicing without a license and later pleaded guilty, but this did not deter patients from seeking his services. In 1879, Catherine Hutchinson Gardner was found dead in a privy behind Cream's office at 204 Dundas Street. Gardner, who was pregnant, had been murdered with a handkerchief soaked in chloroform. Cream had refused to perform an abortion for her, instead advising her to accuse a local businessman of being the father. He claimed Gardner had threatened to poison herself if he did not agree to the abortion and had written him a letter naming the businessman as the father. However, Gardner's family and roommate denied that she had written the letter, citing discrepancies in the signature and handwriting, which led to the letter being dismissed as a forgery. Despite rumors and significant evidence against Cream, authorities took no further action, and the case remained unsolved. Cream then set up a medical practice near the Red Light District in Chicago, where he provided illegal abortions to sex workers. In August of 1880, he was investigated following the death of Mary Ann Faulkner, a patient who had allegedly undergone an operation by Cream. However, he avoided prosecution due to insufficient evidence. In December of 1880, another patient, Miss Stack, died after being treated by Cream, and he subsequently attempted to blackmail the pharmacist who had filled her prescription. In April of 1881, Alice Montgomery died of strychnine poisoning after an abortion in a rooming house just a block from Cream's office. Although the case was ruled a murder, it was never solved. Given the circumstances, Cream was considered a prime suspect. On July 14, 1881, Daniel Stott died of strychnine poisoning at his home in Boone County, Illinois, after Cream provided him with a purported remedy for epilepsy. While the death was initially attributed to natural causes, Cream tried to blackmail the pharmacist involved and later wrote to the coroner blaming him for the death. This led to Cream's arrest, along with Miss Julia A. Stott, who was allegedly Cream's mistress and had obtained poison from him to kill her husband. She testified against Cream to avoid imprisonment, resulting in his conviction for murder. Cream was sentenced to life in Joliet Prison. Daniel Stott's friends later erected a tombstone at his grave with the inscription, "Daniel Stott died June 12, 1881, aged 61 years, poisoned by his wife and Dr. Cream." Cream was released from prison in July of 1891 after Governor Joseph W. Pfeiffer commuted his sentence, allegedly following a plea from Cream's brother and possible bribery of authorities. Using money inherited from his father, who passed away in 1887, Cream sailed for England and arrived in Liverpool on October 1, 1891, 3 years after the Jack the Ripper murders. He traveled to London and took lodgings at 103 Lambeth Palace Road, an area then plagued by poverty, petty crime, and sex work. On October 13, 1891, Ellen Nellie Donworth, a 19-year-old sex worker, received 2 letters from Cream and agreed to meet him. He offered her a drink from a bottle, after which she became gravely ill and died that night from strychnine poisoning. During her inquest, Cream, writing under the pseudonym A. O'Brien, Detective, contacted the coroner offering to reveal the murderer in exchange for a £300,000 reward. He also sent a letter to W.F.D. Smith, owner of W.H. Smith Bookstalls, accusing him of the murder and demanding money for his silence. On October 20th, Cream met Matilda Clover, a 27-year-old sex worker, and gave her pills, instructing her to take 4 before bed. That night, Clover began experiencing severe spasms and died 2 hours later. Her death was initially attributed to heart failure from alcohol withdrawal. Cream, using the alias M. Malone, wrote to prominent physician William Broadbent, claiming to have evidence of Broadbent's involvement in Clover's death and demanding £25,000 for his silence. Broadbent alerted Scotland Yard, which set a trap for the blackmailer, but no arrest was made. On April 2, 1892, after a vacation in Canada, Cream returned to London and met Louise Harvey, a sex worker. He offered her 2 pills, insisting she take them immediately. Harvey, suspicious, pretended to swallow the pills, but secretly disposed of them in the River Thames. On April 11th, Cream visited 2 sex workers, Alice Marsh, 21, and Emma Shrivel, 18, at their flat. He spent the night with them and before leaving, gave them each 3 pills along with a can of tinned salmon. Both women died later that night from strychnine poisoning. Through his blackmail letters, Cream attracted significant attention to himself. The police quickly cleared the individuals he had falsely accused and noted an important detail in the anonymous letters. They referenced the murder of Matilda Clover. Clover's death had been registered as natural, related to her drinking, but the police realized that the anonymous accuser was the same serial killer now dubbed the Lambeth Poisoner. Shortly after, Cream met a visiting New York City policeman who had heard about the Lambeth Poisoner. Cream gave him a brief tour of the locations where the victims had lived. The American policeman later mentioned this encounter to a British officer who found Cream's detailed knowledge of the case suspicious. Scotland Yard placed Cream under surveillance and discovered his frequent visits to sex workers. An investigation in the United States and Canada revealed Cream's history, including his previous conviction for a poisoning murder in 1881. On June 3, 1892, Cream was arrested for the murder of Matilda Clover. On July 13th, he was formally charged with the murders of Clover, Ellen Donworth, Alice Marsh, and Emma Shrivel, the attempted murder of Louise Harvey, and extortion. His medicine/poisoning kit, taken as evidence, is now housed in the Crime Museum. Throughout the proceedings, Cream insisted on being known as Dr. Thomas Neill rather than Thomas Neill Cream, and newspapers often referred to him as Dr. Neill. During the inquest into Matilda Clover's death, conducted by Alston Braxton Hicks in July of 1892, a letter purportedly from Jack the Ripper was read aloud, declaring Dr. Neill innocent, which elicited laughter, including from Cream himself. The jury ultimately concluded that Matilda Clover had died from strychnine poisoning administered by Thomas Neill. Cream's trial took place from October 17th to the 21st of 1892. After just 12 minutes of deliberation, the jury found him guilty on all counts. Justice Henry Hawkins sentenced him to death. On November 15th, less than a month after his conviction, Cream was hanged at Newgate Prison by James Billington. In line with the custom for executed criminals, his body was buried the same day beneath the prison flagstones, along with other executed prisoners, marked by only a single initial. In 1902, his remains were exhumed and reinterred at the City of London Cemetery, where he is now buried in an unmarked grave in Section 339.